Imagine you're holding a tiny, fluffy kitten. It looks up at you with big, watery eyes, lets out a soft mew, and suddenly, a strange, almost alarming urge flashes through you. You want to squeeze it so hard it might pop, or bite its little side until it hurts. You don't feel hatred, on the contrary, you're overflowing with love. So why does our brain respond to pure vulnerability with a violent impulse? Is there a hidden psycho lurking inside each of us? Or is this a glitch in our mental software? Before we figure out why you're mentally snapping the ribs of that poor fluffy creature right now, do one simple thing. Subscribe to the channel and hit like. It's totally free, doesn't require any complex neurochemical reactions, and it really helps us uncover the unsettling truth hiding in everyday stuff. Up until 2013, science pretty much ignored this phenomenon. It was written off as just a weird figure of speech. You know, those frantic new moms who say they could eat up their baby from sheer affection. But two researchers from Yale University, Rebecca Dyer and Oriana Aragon, decided to test just how far this cuteness actually goes. They brought ordinary people into the lab and handed them rolls of bubble wrap. The only rule? Hold the wrap in your hands and watch a slideshow on the screen. Participants saw 3 sets of images. The first set was neutral animals, a boring adult golden retriever just sitting on the grass. The second set was funny shots, the same dog leaping after a frisbee with a goofy expression. And the third group was super cute creatures, tiny newborn kittens and puppies whose legs can barely hold them up and whose eyes take up half their skull. That's when things went nuts in the lab. Previously calm people started destroying the bubble wrap with such fury you'd think their survival depended on popping every single bubble. When an adult dog appeared on screen, the room was silent. But the moment a newborn kitten slide popped up, the plastic crackling became deafening. On average, while looking at kittens, people popped 120% more bubbles than when viewing adult dogs. And they did it unconsciously. Their fingers just squeezed on their own. Dyer and Aragon realized they had stumbled onto a deep evolutionary paradox. Psychologists call it cute aggression. It's a state where a positive stimulus triggers a physical response almost indistinguishable from preparing for a fight or a kill. Picture yourself as a participant in that experiment. You came to Yale for some easy cash they pay for taking part in silly surveys, and instead, you get an existential crisis and shredded plastic wrap. You're sitting on a chair, your pulse quickens, your jaw clenches involuntarily, and your hands start making tiny grasping motions. Your mind is saying, "Oh my God, that puppy is so cute, I want to pet it." But your body acts like you're about to strangle that puppy with your bare hands. It's pure physiology, completely uncontrollable by sheer willpower. When Dyer and Aragon analyzed the participant questionnaires after the experiment, they stumbled on something disturbing. Most subjects were genuinely frightened by their own sensations. People admitted they felt real physical frustration from not being able to touch the animals on the screen. The muscles in their shoulders and forearms were tense in a way typically seen in predators just before they strike. This wasn't just psychological arousal, it was a full mobilization of the motor system. We like to think of ourselves as civilized. We buy organic dog food, build pet hotels, and pay animal behaviorists. But the moment we see something truly cute, that thin veneer of civilization crumbles in a split second. The brain sends commands to the muscles, bypassing all our moral frameworks and social graces. You want to squeeze, bite, crush. And the creepiest part? In that moment, you're absolutely blissful. For a long time, we believed our emotions worked on a simple linear scale. Something good happens, we feel happy. Something bad happens, we get angry or sad. Simple, clear, logical. But this experiment showed that our psyche isn't a smooth road. It's a complex system of counterweights. At some point, the joy scale just snaps under its own weight, and instead of continuing to feel happy, the brain hits the panic button. So why does our body choose aggression in response to the ultimate expression of vulnerability? Is this really just a harmless glitch in our nervous system that makes us pop bubble wrap? Or does the crackle of those bursting bubbles hide an ancient biological algorithm that literally saved our species from extinction? Congratulations, you're a biological puppet. Nature doesn't trust your vaunted intellect when it comes to reproduction and protecting offspring. It needed a reliable, foolproof mechanism to make sure you wouldn't abandon a baby in a cave at the first sign of trouble. And that mechanism was in place long before humans learned to build their first huts. In 1943, Austrian zoologist Konrad Lorenz came up with a concept that explains why we turn into a puddle of warm goo at the sight of a puppy. He called it the baby schema. Lorenz noticed that all mammalian infants share a specific set of physical traits: a large head relative to the body, a prominent forehead, big eyes positioned below the midline of the face, chubby cheeks, a small nose, and a clumsy gait. This geometric code works as an unconditional stimulus. The signal from your retina goes straight to the evolutionarily ancient parts of the brain, completely bypassing cognitive control. You don't have time to think, "Oh, that's a baby, it's helpless, I should help it." By the time you become aware of that thought, your autonomic system has already launched a cascade of reactions. You feel a rush of warmth, your pupils dilate, and your hand involuntarily reaches out to touch. Evolution hacked your nervous system using nothing but basic facial geometry. This biological hack is so powerful that it even works on inanimate objects. Ever wonder why cars like the Mini Cooper, the Fiat 500, or the classic Volkswagen Beetle feel so irresistible? Marketers and designers just copied the proportions of a baby's face. Round headlights for big eyes, a raised hood for a tiny nose, soft, chubby body lines. We're buying tons of cold metal simply because our ancient brains mistake them for helpless infants. Congratulations! Auto companies love you for your biological predictability. Konrad Lorenz, in his research, described something called the supernormal stimulus. He did these famous experiments with birds. He gave geese giant wooden eggs painted way brighter than real ones. The geese abandoned their actual nests and tried to incubate those oversized fakes, ignoring their own offspring. That artificial, exaggerated signal was more appealing to their brains than reality itself. Those photos of purebred kittens, puppies, or anime characters on your phone? They're the same giant wooden eggs for the human psyche. In the wild, the baby schema is always balanced. Animals grow fast, their proportions shift, and the magical trigger fades. But humans learn to crank up that signal artificially. We bred dogs with extremely flat faces and unnaturally big eyes, like pugs or French bulldogs. We built an entire cute industry that bombards our brains every day with supernormal stimuli. And when we face such a concentrated stimulus, our nervous system starts to seriously malfunction. Imagine you're an ancient hunter, used to the sight of blood, harsh faces, and a gray landscape. Suddenly, this creature made of pure, refined Kinchinshima appears in front of you. Your brain is not ready for that attack. Evolution built this trigger for survival in the wild, not for staring at photoshopped kittens on ultra-high-res screens. Our brain hits a stimulus stronger than any natural limit. At that moment, your brain's reward system basically explodes. Neurons start dumping dopamine and oxytocin like you've just found an unlimited stash of high-calorie food. Your mind goes into a state of wild overdrive. But instead of gently soothing you with tenderness, this chemical cocktail starts blowing the fuses in your head. When researchers strap sensors onto people's heads to see how the brain reacts to this extreme level of cuteness, they expected a soft, calming wave of warmth. But the activity graphs showed something completely different. The readings looked more like a severe drug overdose or a panic attack. The brain was literally drowning in its own pleasure, losing the ability to control reality. So, what's actually happening inside your neural networks when this biological engine overheats from an overload of cuteness? Which parts of your brain start melting, making you clench your fists in helpless fury at a tiny kitten? Alright, buckle up. We're diving deep inside your skull, right where a hidden chemical war is unfolding right now. In 2018, neuroscientist Catherine Stavropoulos from the University of California set out to find what actually happens in the brain during that strange flash of rage. She didn't just stick to questionnaires and bubble wrap. Stavropoulos fitted 54 volunteers with special caps containing 64 EEG electrodes. That let her record in real time the electrical activity of different brain regions while they looked at pictures. The participants were shown 4 categories of images: regular babies and children, plus versions of the same faces that have been computer-altered to look cartoonishly cute, bigger eyes, rounder cheeks, higher foreheads. Also, normal adult animals, and impossibly fluffy, tiny kittens and puppies. When the super cute creatures appeared on screen, the equipment registered an enormous spike in electrical oscillations. Two systems lit up like crazy: the brain's reward system and the emotional system of the cortex. The mesolimbic pathway, which controls dopamine production, was working at maximum capacity. The brain was practically drowning in a dopamine tsunami. Dopamine isn't just a pleasure hormone. It's a neurotransmitter that makes you lock your attention on an object, screaming, "This is incredibly important for your survival. Look only at this." At the same time, the amygdala kicked off a massive emotional response. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, common sense, and social norms, at that moment is like an exhausted security guard on Black Friday. It simply can't handle the mob of rabid neurons demanding that you hug, consume, and protect that fluffy cloud right now. And here's the real danger. The human psyche is not physiologically built to stay in a state of extreme overstimulation for long. If that level of dopamine storm kept going, brain cells would start dying from overexcitation, and you'd slip into a stupor, totally detached from reality. You'd just freeze in front of that kitten with a goofy smile, unresponsive to anything around you. To save you from biochemical self-destruction, the brain pulls a brilliant trick that scientists call dimorphous expression of emotion. It's an emergency pressure release valve. When your level of positive emotion blows past the upper limit, the brain realizes system is overheating. The prefrontal cortex is losing control. To snap you back to normal, the brain artificially generates an impulse of the opposite charge, aggression. It works like a home air conditioner. When the sensor detects the room temperature has hit a critical high, the compressor automatically blasts out cold air. That aggressive impulse is the cold air for your overheated brain. The urge to clench your fists, growl, bite, or squeeze a kitten half to death isn't some hidden sadism. It's emergency anesthesia. The brain forcefully engages the motor cortex, which preps your body for physical attack, just to dump the extra tension through muscle tone. This simulated rage flash instantly puts out the dopamine fire, bringing you back to emotional balance. So basically, when you look at a kitten and hiss through your teeth, "I'm gonna eat you up," your body is running an emergency self-therapy session. You're literally saving your neurons from toxic overstimulation. Without this mechanism, you turn into a helpless vegetable, drooling with delight in front of a pet store window. Let's face it, nature thinks we're pretty dumb. If it left the regulation of our emotions to our conscious minds, humanity would have died out back in the Paleolithic. The bare facts prove people who experience the strongest cute aggression bounce back to a stable emotional state much faster than those who just quietly coo. Their nervous system works more efficiently. They literally protect themselves from burnout through controlled anger. But if our brain has such a complex autonomous stabilization system, how deeply is this program embedded in our evolutionary history? What would have happened to our ancestors if they didn't have this aggressive safety valve? Imagine yourself in the Pleistocene era. Around you roam cave bears, saber-toothed cats, and other unpleasant creatures that dream of using you as a calorie source. You're sitting in a cave looking at your newborn baby. They're perfect. Their baby schema is working at full blast. Your eyes lock onto the image, and the reward system floods your brain with dopamine. If your ancestor didn't have that built-in cute aggression mechanism, they'd simply fall into emotional paralysis. They'd sit there for hours staring at the infant, drooling with tenderness and feeling absolute bliss. Great for a family album, but deadly for survival. A mother in a dopamine nirvana wouldn't notice a predator approaching the cave. She wouldn't hear a twig snap outside, wouldn't check the fire, wouldn't go gather roots. Emotional paralysis is an unaffordable luxury in a world where everything wants to eat you. The brain needed a sharp, sobering slap in the face, an impulse of aggression, and you snap out of the trance instantly. You clench your fists, your jaw tightens, blood rushes to your muscles. The brain simulates a fight-or-flight response. You're instantly alert, your attention spikes, you're ready to defend the cave, hunt, and react to danger. That internal aggressive kick brings you back to the real world from the world of pink illusions. Evolution created this mechanism not so you could pop bubble wrap, but so you wouldn't literally die of happiness in front of a hungry predator. And the fact that this program is hardwired into the basic software of our species is confirmed by linguistic research. This isn't just a trendy internet meme from the era of social media and funny pictures. Let's take a trip around the world. In the Philippines, in Tagalog, there's a word, gigil. It translates to grinding your teeth and trembling in your body at the sight of something unbearably cute. Filipinos have been using this concept for centuries, long before Yale University did its bubble wrap studies. In Indonesia, there's a concept called gemes. It describes that irresistible physical urge to pinch a chubby baby's cheek or squeeze a fluffy kitten because you're just overwhelmed by cuteness. In Japanese, the concept of kawaii originally carried a hint of vulnerability. It triggered almost a painful sense of pity, mixed with a slight physical discomfort right in the chest. Even in English, we constantly use food-related metaphors of violence. You're so sweet, I could eat you up. I just want to bite those chubby little rolls. Why does your brain link tenderness with eating? Neuroscientists explain it by pointing out that the brain regions responsible for oral fixation, satiety, and aggressive behavior are located right next to each other. When you're hit with a dopamine overload, the electrical signals just spill over into neighboring areas, triggering ancient food and hunting instincts. You've definitely seen those videos where tough guys, just back from the army or burly bikers, suddenly start squeaking in a high-pitched voice the moment they see a tiny French bulldog puppy. From the outside, it looks hilarious, but it's actually that same evolutionary programming kicking in. Their brain is going through a massive overload, and the only way to deal with it is to let off steam through weird, uncharacteristic behavior. If you thought you were a unique, deeply sensitive snowflake whose emotions run deeper and more refined than everyone else's, I've got some bad news for you. The brain of a Filipino fisherman, an Indonesian farmer, and a New York stockbroker all break down in exactly the same way, following the same biological pattern. We're all running on ancient algorithms that got hardwired into our skulls millions of years ago. But this emotional thermostat doesn't only kick in when we look at fluffy kittens or chubby babies. Our brain uses the same crazy bipolar logic in plenty of other everyday situations that we consider totally normal, even though, if you step back and look at them, they seem like clinical insanity. Let's think about the happiest moment of your life. Maybe it was your wedding day, the birth of a long-awaited child, or the moment you found out about a huge win that would change everything. What did you actually do in that moment of triumph? Chances are, you cried. From the outside, that makes zero sense. Crying is an ancient evolutionary signal for grief, physical pain, trauma, or devastating loss. So why would a person sob and choke up when they're experiencing the peak of happiness? The answer lies in that same mechanism of dimorphous emotion regulation. When you're feeling absolutely over-the-top happiness, your sympathetic nervous system is running at the edge of what your body can handle. A cascade of hormones makes your heart race like crazy, your blood pressure spikes, and your breathing becomes irregular. Physiologically, this state is almost identical to severe shock or a panic attack. If that surge kept going for too long, your body simply couldn't handle the overload. In extreme cases, it could even lead to a hypertensive crisis or a mini-stroke. And then the brain instantly triggers an emergency safety protocol. It switches on sobbing. That rush of tears immediately activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which works like a powerful biological emergency brake. It slows your heart rate, lowers blood pressure, relaxes cramped muscles, and steers your body back to safety. Your tears of joy aren't just a sign of sentimentality. They're a physiological shield that saved you from a heart attack in your moment of triumph. Now look at the flip side. Hysterical laughter in moments of mortal danger, or at a funeral. You've probably felt that awkward, suffocating urge to smile, or even let out a chuckle when something truly tragic happens. Society harshly judges that behavior, calling it the height of insensitivity or cynicism. But your gray matter has its own take on morality and survival. When your stress and grief levels smash through every conceivable limit, the concentration of cortisol and adrenaline in your blood becomes toxic to your nervous system. Prolonged stress triggers apoptosis, the programmed death of brain cells. To prevent the destruction of neural connections, your self-regulation system artificially generates a jolt of amusement. Laughter forces your body to release endorphins, which partly neutralize the destructive effects of stress hormones. This isn't a sign of joy, it's your mind's desperate attempt to survive under the rubble of a psychological catastrophe. All these facts lead us to a deeply uncomfortable, almost humiliating philosophical conclusion. We're used to thinking of ourselves as masters of our own fate, our own thoughts, our own feelings. We like to believe our emotions are profound, complex, almost spiritual experiences that reflect the uniqueness of our immortal soul. But dry science ruthlessly rips off that romantic veil. Our ego whispers that we control every step we take. But the truth is, our prefrontal cortex just writes pretty justifications for decisions our limbic system made a split second earlier. We invent elaborate theories of art, write poetry, and compose philosophical treatises, but underneath it all is simple physiology, an attempt to keep our neurotransmitters in balance. We're not the pilots of this incredibly complex biological vessel. We're just passengers in the backseat of an autonomous neurochemical taxi. Our consciousness doesn't make decisions, it just reads reports from the dashboard. The brain decides when we should get angry, when we should cry with happiness, and when we should feel rage at the sight of a cute, fluffy creature. It does all of this with one single goal: to keep the system in equilibrium. So next time you're standing in front of a tiny puppy, clenching your fists, tightening your jaw, feeling a strange surge of aggressive warmth, relax. You're fine. You're not a closet sadist or a lunatic. You're just a complex biological robot whose internal air conditioner is working perfectly. Smile at that weird little system glitch and silently thank your brain for saving you from madness so elegantly.